There are many extraordinary people in SM history, and many stories that have yet to be told. This is one of those stories, a story of a humble man from a humble beginning, on how generosity, perseverance, hard work, basketball, and a school helped to save and guide a young man to fulfill his potential and become the man he is today. Born on September 7th, 1946, in Bismarck, North Dakota, his actual name is Jacob Anthony Wald. He was raised in a house at 1220 East Broadway that is no longer there.
You know, the legend is that Tony grew up playing on a makeshift rim outside his house. The funny thing is, you know, you went back and measured it years later, it was 9-10. So it's amazing that he was as prolific scorer as he was.
Tony's mother was an uneducated German immigrant that could speak very little English. His mother and father worked very hard. Nonetheless, guidance was what Tony needed most at this early part of his life. Tony, through the help of sponsors financially, attended both St. Mary's Grade School and St. Mary's Central High School.
Tony, like many graduates who have come through St. Mary's Central High School, have always talked about knowing that they had an obligation to give back, because when they were in school, someone gave to them to make sure that they could afford to be at the school. A lot of them didn't even know it, weren't even aware that what the tuition was, weren't aware that someone was helping subsidize behind the scenes so that they could get a Catholic education. And as his son Tommy had offered that, Tony always knew that there was a lot expected of him, because going to St. Mary's did have an impact on him, knowing that he needed to be virtuous and honorable and to operate at a higher level.
And when Tony was back 2 years ago, we got the opportunity to host him in our locker room before our game. He came in and talked with our team a little bit, and he shared a story with us. He talked about when he was growing up that he didn't have a hot shower at home, that his family didn't have a whole lot. And he talked his primary reason at the time then for playing sports was just to get a hot shower. His message through that was to share with our guys that we need to be appreciated for the things we have.
Tony averaged 19.3 points per game his senior year at St. Mary's, leading the state in scoring. There was no three-point line back then, but many of his shots were beyond that distance. He shot 52.9% from the field his senior year. He was recruited by hundreds of colleges across America, including most of the Division I, Division II, and NAIA schools. Of course, recruiting worked much differently back then. All of the major programs were interested in him, especially since it was printed in the paper that he was an All-American. Tony elected to stay closer to home and play at Dickinson State for Laverne Jessen, who is still friends with Tony today. Tony was the only of 7 children to attend college. A lot of that is attributable to his basketball scholarship, because nobody in his family could afford to go. Tony made his mark at Dickinson. During his time there, on February 24th, 1968,
it was kind of a special night. His mother only saw him play one game at Dickinson State, and she came out for the last regular season game of his senior year, and that's the night that Tony broke the scoring record by scoring 45 points.
He was 3-time All-Conference, averaged 21.1 points per game his senior year, and finished with 1,413 total career points. The Dickinson Savages had 4 consecutive conference championships, 2 national tournament appearances, and made it to the Elite 8 his senior year. They had a 43-4 conference record and a 46-2 record at home in Scott Gymnasium. After college, Tony became a teacher and coach at Killdeer High School. Like his playing career, Tony was a successful coach at Killdeer. Of course, the best thing that came out of his time in Killdeer was meeting his wife, Barbara. Following Killdeer, he started an employment agency and worked for Stop and Go Markets, and finally worked for a Fortune 500 grocery wholesaler called the Nash Finch Company, where he was promoted to divisional vice president in 1992. In 1995, Tony purchased the Thompson Company in Grand Island, Nebraska, which became the extremely successful company that he runs today. From 2001 to 2016, Tony bought numerous food distributing facilities. And in July of 2017, he sold most of those distribution facilities to U.S. Foods. In January of 2019, the last 3 manufacturing facilities he owned were consolidated under a single banner, Wald Family Foods. Today, Tony is involved with this business just as much as he's always been and runs the company with his 2 sons. Through all of his achievements and successes, Tony will never forget where he came from and where his journey started. He will not forget his humble beginning, the generosity and opportunities that were given to him through basketball and St. Mary's, and all the hard work and perseverance that it took for him to be the man and the success he is today. As grateful as he is to be a St. Mary's Saint, we are honored to have him be one. Once a saint, always a saint. What a true honor it is in naming our new home court after such a remarkable man. Welcome to Tony Wald Court.